Hello and welcome to From the BLN, the Burnley podcast. This is the debrief for Stoke City 0, Burnley 2. Full pod squad to pick our way through yet another victory, yet another clean sheet, yet another second half stroll in the park by and large for Burnley. So I'm Andrew Greaves alongside Simon Evans, Chris Borden, Justin Connolly and Paul Woodhouse. Goals from Jay Rodriguez and a penalty from Josh Brownhill, enough to give the Clarets a victory at the Vitinho or the Bet365 or whatever they call it these days. Let's start with you, Simon. We are building a habit, aren't we, of being able to kind of turn on the afterburners a little bit in the second half and get a job done.
Yeah, I would imagine this was a game where, there was a bit of adjusting and a few hard words said at half time, because that last period of the first half, we were sort of riding our luck a little bit. They did... the Iron Curtain didn't look so solid from sort of 25 minutes on, really. But then whatever was said and done at half-time had the desired effect, because it was, just a very competent, thorough performance, wasn't it, really? I mean, slight tactical change with playing, three, bringing Sarmiento in there and playing three behind J-Rod. Seemed to work pretty well in the version of it we saw in the second half, especially. But tight, solid, and you end the day on the road at Stoke with the crowd all laying every touch as you pass it around. I mean, we said after the last game that there were moments that we looked like we had an extra man. There were moments in that game in the second half where we looked like we had two extra men. And there was always like a pass on and an option on. So very competent, professional display and three well-deserved points.
Yeah, and Chris, we often talk about consistency, and consistency in the Championship is key. Our friends down the road in Shad have kind of helped us out with a couple of administering a couple of defeats on kind of top six rivals, shall we say. We've whinged a bit in the past about the style of play and things like that, really, while still maintaining that consistency. And if you're going to get promoted, you need to go to places like Stoke and get a positive result, don't you?
Well, I mean, Stoke's one of them places where for Burnley's record, it's fabulous since they moved into the new stadium that's probably been there about 30 years now. But it's a place that it's notoriously, a difficult place to go to. That's the sort of, everyone's thoughts. It's, I think Josh Laurent was saying it's going to be hostile, and it usually is. It's one of the angriest places. Bar Ellen Road, I think, that you can go when they're at in their pomp and full tilt. It's it's difficult, but more often than not, when Burnley have gone there, they've gone and quietened the place down completely. And that's it. We're talking on the pod that came out on Friday morning about this sort of over reliance I felt on sort of wanting to create the perfect pullback, which is great when you do that against Coventry. But I thought there was a lot of sort of just playing balls into areas without picking anyone out against Coventry. And then you see yesterday sort of Koleosho cutting inside and clipping a ball for J-Rod that he's just glanced over the top. And the first goal comes from I mentioned Trippier in Friday's podcast. Putting the sort of ball over that you can attack near post, you can attack penalty spot, and you can attack back post. And Laurent gets on the back of it, on the end of it, the back post, plays it across, and voila, you've got a goal. But it's if you deliver those sort of balls in to J-Rod, who's got the movement, who's good aerially, then you'll get your benefit. But it's nice to see those sort of, even the ball from Laurent in for Anthony that he should score from. They're the sort of deliveries we haven't been over reliant on, and it's nice to see that sort of changing up that sort of style of attack, really. So that's that's poor dividends. And if you can score from the perfectly crafted goal via a cutback, great. But if we can add that to our arsenal as well, then like Parker says, I think we are adding to our game as an attacking force, and nobody's breaking us down at the moment.
Yeah, and Woody, we've talked a little bit this season about Josh Cullen, getting my Joshes right, and the fact that he's not been as effective. I think these last two games against Coventry midweek at home and Stoke, we've kind of seen Cullen doing the role we've been crying out for him to be doing all season, haven't we? In terms of that really good shield in the defence, but trying to move the ball in a much more positive way. And it looks to, we've talked about the click. Is it going to click? When's it going to click? The Josh Cullen bit seems to have clicked, doesn't it, in the centre of the park?
Yeah, it does. It just seems, like you say, it just seems to have happened this week, doesn't it? There's him and Roberts, and pretty much across the side, there seems to be little things working better, or as they probably should have been doing. But there's, like you say, that shielding, just carrying the ball, those little dinks are coming off, etc. And I thought Stoke was quite an interesting test, because the set up with like almost a defensive five with a four in front in the first half, but they also bullied us a little bit up top. And those have been the two things that we struggled with this season, either breaking sides down that have camped, and especially sides up front who have like bullied us a little bit. But we managed to get out of trouble, and I think the first goal was a great example of that. As we battled. I think it was Humphreys battled to kind of get the ball out on the left-hand side. Then he released it. Cullen then released it again. Like Chris was saying, that lovely little pinpoint ball, and it seemed extremely simple. But there was a lot of good work that went into that I think personified how this team's developing. We've started to battle a little bit more. We've started to find those passes a little bit more, and we're getting on the end of stuff. And like now, and it's only been a week that we've gone from, sack the bastard to, we're the best side in the championship. So that's how fickle we are, isn't it? But it's definitely been an improvement. And I thought we played with a little bit of a swagger in that second half yesterday. Not too much, but just a little one.
Yeah, and Justin, when Parker came in and at the start of the season, he talked often about picking the right team, or picking the team he thinks could beat the opposition, as opposed to kind of, necessarily sticking. And we saw that again yesterday, didn't we, with Hannibal and Hannibal dropping out the side as well, and bringing Sarmiento into that kind of Hannibal advanced position. But we kind of, Koleosho coming back in, it kind of felt what was needed, didn't it? Rather than kind of trying to, play the same team every week or have your favourites. He does look to be a manager who's keen to kind of look at the opposition and then set up accordingly, which, we've not always had, shall we say, over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's true, I think. I mean, he had that reputation, didn't he, coming in as being somebody who picked a team for a particular game. I think he does it a lot with Humphreys at left-back as well, if he wants to be a little bit more solid defensively, because obviously Pires is a bit more of a forward-thinking player. I think I don't want to be negative about this, because we're in a really good situation, aren't we? But everyone else has been so positive about everything that I feel duty bound to just throw a bit of shade on it. I'm finding myself not really enjoying watching the games, even when we're winning 2-0. I think it's difficult. I've been thinking about this. It's really difficult to put my finger on why. I suspect it's something to do with the fact that it's built on this, defensive solidity. And I've always been one who said, well, defending and goalkeeping is just as much part of the game as anything else. And I really love watching Egan Riley play. I think he's been a real revelation this season. He's got that aura about him of a man who'd rather die than let somebody score a goal. And I love that in defenders. But even though we win in these, even though Woody used a good word to describe it there, like developing, the side is developing, it's getting better. We are doing things differently to what we were doing, 3 or 4 weeks ago. But, either coming away from the ground or turning the TV off after these 2-0 wins, I just find the games instantly forgettable. I can't remember anything about them immediately. it's just I don't find it great to watch. I don't know what you guys think, but I can't. It's difficult to put my finger on why, because we ought to be really encouraged by this, and we ought to be enjoying it, because it hasn't always been this way, has it?
Is it the expectation? Is it the way? I mean, it's you can flick the switch and say, I mean, if you like, it was miserable last year and we weren't enjoying it last year, but because we weren't competitive. But
yeah,
I think Burnley like the underdog mentality. That's why we enjoyed the ride with Sean so much, because we were upsetting apple carts, and it was you'd be getting battered and going nick a 90th minute winner from a set piece and things like that. It was amusing, because you come away from games and
that is true.
All you'd hear week in, week out, all they've done is camping and nick one, and it was hilarious. But now we're expected to be the dominant force in probably 80-90% of our games, and we are, and it's just a case of we're waiting for that goal to go in, and then we can relax a bit, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, that's my sort of take. I'm waiting for us to go in front, and then I can relax a little, and then you're expected to get the points once we go ahead. Now it's
because we're so good defensively. If we score a goal,
it doesn't stir the soul, though, does it? It doesn't stir the soul, and it's like. And I wonder if it doesn't go back to a topic we discussed before, which is modern football. At the risk of us all sounding like grumpy old blogs, heaven forbid. The fact is that what Burnley are doing is what you're supposed to do in modern football. Burnley are keeping possession. They're tight at the back. They're putting together long moves of short passes and they're well structured, and all these things are what you're supposed to do in modern football, and it isn't very exciting. I mean, most modern football isn't. And I think I was listening to a podcast this week from a guy who set up this six-a-side league in Germany called the Baller League, which is going to be coming out in England and stuff. And it sounds a ludicrous idea in a lot of ways. It's just an indoor six-a-side league. And I don't think it'll last, to be honest. It's using influencers and all that kind of thing. But he said his main motivation for doing it is he grew up watching football in the 1990s when it was all so exciting and there was like crazy games happening and goals flying in and red cards and wild challenges and all this kind of stuff. And he said it's just become really boring, hasn't it? And he's watching mainly the Bundesliga. And he just said the entertainment factor has gone out of football. So we need to fill it by turning it into like a football version of the UFC or something. He seems to think that's by the by. Don't want to get into that, but his assessment that the game has lost its entertainment value, I think, is undeniable.
But did you watch the first half at West Ham last night? Or I was watching the Chelsea Villa game earlier on, and there was a sequence just before Chelsea's second goal that was absolutely astonishing. Well, so it is still thrilling, but I think with the overall pervading feel is I'd say that this. I've just watched Guardiola's football get dismantled utterly again by high tempo, exciting, attacking football, and I think that's what we've got to cling to. That we're going to get a bit more of that,
Well, if it's the death of the Pep mind virus, as somebody dubbed it on Twitter, then maybe there is some hope there. Maybe that analysis we sort of collectively came up with, that Pep's way of going about football, the poor imitations of it that it's generated all the way down the pyramid, is what's making the game less entertaining. If that is actually seen to be decisively dismantled and destroyed, then maybe there is hope for a bit more entertainment. But I don't think you can blame Scott Parker for not entertaining us enough. I'm not saying you are doing, Justin, but I don't think we can blame him. He's put together. He's playing the modern game, and he's playing it very well at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we'd be complaining about it if we were playing that way and not winning. But obviously, when you are doing well, when you are doing that job well, which is what Scott Parker is doing, he's assembled and I know we're not making excuses based on the fact the squad was basically thrown together at the last minute, but he has had that to contend with, and he rode out that storm very well. And we do appear to be making progress, but we're making progress to a place where, we're going to start winning games 3-0 fairly soon, aren't we? And then after that, we'll just there's not. It doesn't strike me that there's ever going to be a point where we start worrying about whether we're going to be finishing in that top sort of 6 or so. Doesn't, there's no sort of. I think you could pretty much draw the table now, couldn't you? Don't you think?
It's a bit of that lack of jeopardy, isn't it? I think.
Yeah,
we struggle with that lack of jeopardy a little bit, and I think I've used this quote before, but your little chat there reminded me a little bit of I heard Josh Widdicombe talk about Jack D, and Jack D used to like football. Then he said to Jack D, like, "Why don't you like football?" And he just said, "It'll never end. We'll never decide who's the winner," and it just goes on and on. And you reminded me a little bit of Jack D there with the kind of slightly negative.
Sorry.
Kind of, no, you're fine. But I think we'll just have a quick B-hole bingo card check. So we've got Chris mentioning Sean Dyche. So if you've got that, make sure you've crossed that off. A negative voice after a 2-0 win. We've got that on your card. And Simon, once again, mentioning Pep Guardiola's modern football. So we're probably on for a full house at some point. We're going to get Magic Mike in before the end. There'll be something else as well. But, Woody,
I think there is jeopardy. I think, I say very much to your line of thinking. I think the sort of the top 6 or so is taking shape. I think, and I'm going to put it out there, I think the top 3 will be the top 3. The jeopardy lies in which order that'll be, because nobody wants to miss out. If you're up there in the top 3 all season and you're the one who missed out, you've got to get your mindset right to go through a semi-final and then go and win a cup final at Wembley Stadium. So you want to be in that top 2. I don't care about this, so it's the best way to get promoted, and it is. But you want to absolutely romp automatic promotion, to be honest. But it's which way the piece is going to fall come May.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, we're never happy, are we? I mean, as Justin pointed out rightly, we were pissed off when we were playing like this and not picking up points. He has got a point, though. It feels very. I think Chris said it in the WhatsApp group. Score a goal, you win a football match, and that's what it feels like at the minute. We get ahead, we ain't conceding. I mean, this ridiculous run of, clean sheets and wins that we've been on after that real sticky period where we were kind of edging past teams or, getting a 0-0 draw. And so we were solid defensively. At some point, you'd think that we could marry up some of the kind of, letting the shackles off like we do at times, and we certainly did at times second half yesterday, second half against Coventry, to kind of string that into, maybe 60 minutes of a game, maybe 70 minutes of a game. At the minute, it is quite, what's the word I'm looking for? I think, Simon, I can't remember what word you used, like not industrious, but it was very kind of, professional. It was just a smart performance, weren't it, in terms of get a job done, get out.
Yeah.
Thorough, there we go, thorough. You'd hope that actually letting the shackles off a little bit as we do and creating if we can start to string that together over over longer periods, and we're kind of cutting out that getting nervous with them attacking kind of side of things, we could become quite exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's risk aversion, isn't it? I just watched the highlights again, the Golazzo highlights, and they were penned at 9 minutes, and I thought this is going to be a stretch. And it genuinely was. And that's the point. We kind of equate the idea of highlights and dominance with goal attempts, corners, and stuff in the final third. But there's also dominance, which speaks to the pet ball business with regards to possession, defensiveness, and making sure that you aren't necessarily conceding those chances and getting into positions to then be counter-attacked. And I get a very perverse sense of enjoyment out of the way we're playing at the minute. I like to watch the various patterns. I like to see us nullify opponents. But yes, I do take the point that we are in the entertainment business, and that's what it is at the end of the day. And if you're not being entertained necessarily, then it's a little bit harder sometimes to stick with it. But I think we are starting to carve out those chances because they come at a premium, don't they, in this kind of football. And you've got to make sure that when you are in those little periods of dominance, you've got to get something to show for it. But we've seen this corner turned to this from what we were complaining about with regards to 0-0 and not getting these results. We're now getting the 1-2-0s. We're second. We're getting better. We're improving. I would say just stick with it a little bit longer and see what comes out of it. I mean, if we wind up having a Christmas period such as this, we could be clearing first or second, and that should be our primary focus and our goal. And then start thinking about, do we have the luxury to start playing some kind of champagne football? At the minute, I'm not too worried because the goal is to get promotion, because that's the expectation, like we said. And if we sometimes have one or two games that might not be as pleasing on the eye, or mess up our blood pressures as we may require, then so be it.
Well, Scott Parker's not in the entertainment business, is he? He's in the. He'll tell you he's in the results business.
Yeah. Exactly.
And no one's gonna. If we were 6th or 7th in the league, winning games 3-2 and losing games 4-1 and stuff like that, Scott Parker would be under a lot more pressure than he is now for thoroughly competent professional performances and winning 1-0 and 2-0. And it's like, the other thing is we've been able to do this with, although we've got like loads of long-term injuries and people sat in the stands that we've forgotten about, we haven't actually, since he's settled on his team, we haven't actually had many injuries at all to what have become the starters. So, like, maybe before we get too cocky, like, let's imagine this team without Esteve for 2 months, heaven forbid, or without Josh Cullen for 2 months, So, at the moment things are going our way, but the Christmas period can always wreck plans like that. So it might not be quite as smooth as we're thinking.
Yeah, I think we've enough in that department. I've got to be. If he started the game yesterday without Hannibal and Brownhill, and I know Cullen's a sort of metronome through which most of our play sort of flows as such, but Steph's one, especially when Bayer's not. Bayer doesn't look close to a return. If Bayer was on the fringes, then you could almost cope with Esteve, but. We do have options in that department. We've got options.
Well, we've got John Egan at the moment, and that's it. And maybe Joe Worrell soon, hopefully.
Ekdal's closing in as well, apparently, isn't he? But the one area is that he's been without Foster for how long now, hasn't he? He's been without Fleming for he missed the 2 games before now. So he's had to make do and mend up front, hasn't he?
We are inching towards January now. It's getting closer on the horizon, so we can do something about it then, can't we? We can plug a few holes there.
We'll get Ferguson on loan. It'll be right.
But that's the big rumour, isn't it? That kind of we'd be after a Ferguson from Brighton, and he looks like he's the kind of player who would fulfil that role. But I mean, just looking at kind of Jay Rodriguez and the impact he's had since kind of coming into the side, I mean, it's not. We've spoken quite a bit about how he's not the player he was because he's a lot, he's older as everyone gets older. But I mean, Woody, there's still a he becomes a focal point, doesn't he? And I think probably the last 2 games, that's probably been again, as well as Josh Cullen kind of stepping up his performances, having Jay in there really feels like we've got something to hang his hat on, doesn't it? When we're looking for a focal point up top.
He's definitely been a difference, and he's bagged a couple. And like you say, he is that focal point, and he knows the game, he knows the position, and he knows what he's doing. And his legs aren't what they were, but he's bringing players in. He's making those moves. He's creating a little bit of space. He's bringing other players into play, and I think he's doing a sterling job, which I think you can do at Championship level. We saw that when Bash had learned how to play football again in the last Championship season, he was that focal point. He was looking like a guy who'd completely gone, and the next thing you know, once he'd learned how to play VK ball, you wouldn't have done without him. And we may see something similar with J-Rod this season if he can keep fit. And to all intents and purposes, Parker said that he's, looking extremely good in training. He's a fit boy, and he should be able to see most of the season out. So
just played 3 games in a week, didn't he?
Exactly.
And he's about being smart, though, isn't he?
And a lot of all that, a lot of racing about. He was putting the work in, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But Simon, it is about being smart, isn't it? I mean, he's adapting his game for his legs to a certain extent, isn't he? As good footballers do. You know, like I say, footballing brain, not in doubt. Jack Cork was a bit similar. You know, they were a bit of a drop off from Jack in terms of his ability to get up and down as much as he used to. But good players do adapt their game and the way they play the game, don't they?
Well, especially good experienced players, yeah. And he's got a huge amount of experience, hasn't he? And it raises the question, you know, if Fleming gets fully fit, I mean, we presume because he was on the bench that he's maybe not 100% yet, but he might have been. Would you leave J-Rod out and put Fleming back in as number 9? Because I don't think I would.
No,
well, he's not a number 9. That'd be my argument. I agree with you, Simon. I mean, he's not a number 9, is he? He's kind of almost the Sarmiento replacement. If you are going to try and squeeze, you know, both of them in, Jay and Fleming, you know, you've then got to drop a Hannibal or a Sarmiento because you'd expect he would want to play that number 10 role.
Yeah, and I like Sarmiento in that role. You know, I think he's actually contributed more there than he has done out wide, to be honest, because he just gives he can just break up those passages of, like, you know, 20 odd passes going round and round, and then he'll go off on a wander somewhere, and you know that can drive pep ball coaches mad when someone does that. But it breaks things up. It makes us less predictable, I think. You know, I mean, and even in the pep ball teams, you had players like, you know, David Silva, who would go off on a little journey, or a Bernardo Silva who break it up, and he gives us that bit of something that makes us less predictable, I think. So I quite like him there. So I'm starting to wonder where is Fleming's role in this team, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's, Chris, a bit of a luxury to have in it, all of these players, but not enough pegs to put them in. I mean, you know, you'd expect, given the fanfare around his signing, that Hannibal would be one of the first names on the team sheet, given the fact he's, you know, played in La Liga, he's been at Man United, schooled through United, you know, but we're having these players. I mean, Josh Brownhill, clearly, you know, probably not fully fit, you know, not fit enough to start, but, you know, come Friday night against Middlesbrough, you've got a real head scratch, haven't you, in terms of what the team's going to be? Because, you know, do you bring Josh Brownhill back in? He's club captain. He feels like a favourite. He's top goal scorer. Who drops out for him? Do you bring Hannibal back in? Does Pires come back in instead of Bashir Humphreys? You know, we talk about the amount of talent we've got, but you wouldn't want to be in Scott Parker's overpriced puffer jacket, would you? Trying to pick what team's going to turn out on Friday night.
Well, I would. This is the thing. These are the options that he's got now. I say, bar another striker maybe in January at the moment. It's horses for courses, isn't it? Does he want to go? If we're playing a more physical side, maybe you do play. If you're away from home, it's a more physical side. Maybe you do play Humphrey at left back. Maybe you do play Hannibal. And maybe you do play Fleming as a 10 or even as a 9, but he's able to make these options, as well as he played, at times against Coventry, to then break up the front three as such and make it a 4-2-3-1, and leave Hannibal and Brownhill on the bench. It's not just the options. It's changing the shape slightly, little tweaks here and there, and he's doing what he's been tasked with, isn't he? He's getting results. That sort of rotation. He managed to leave Koleosho out, which, one game's not much of a rest in the scheme of things, but he's just giving him, just freshening him up a little. And, he came, he started and he looked quite fresh, quite sharp again yesterday. But these are the decisions. He must feel, So I mentioned that the top three as they are now. I think the top three will stay the top three because they've got the depth of squad. They've got the best 3-11s in the league for my money, and they've got the greatest depth of squad. So if there are injuries, let's say Simon says, there will be injuries, there will be suspensions. I think those three clubs will cope with it far easier than the rest.
Yeah. Let's just end with news of a former Burnley player. We did tweet about this. The only player in history to score against Luton Town and then win the South American version of the Champions League. But he only cost about $1 million, Mr. Vitinho, Simon, on the winning side in the cup final. For Botafogo or whatever, however you pronounce it. I'm not even going to attempt to announce the name of the cup.
Justin should be able to help us out with that one after spending a week in the Amazon.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Well, I wasn't in the Amazon. I was in the Pantanal, a bit further south, but still in Brazil.
Okay.
Yes, in Brazil. But I don't even know where Botafogo is. Are they a Rio club?
Rio club, yeah. No, they had a bit of a shocker when former Inter Miami midfielder Gregori managed to get himself sent off in 30 seconds.
It was an astonishing challenge, that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the guy did come in with a low head, but it was high and the studs were up, and they're down to 10 men, and you sort of thought, well, poor old Vitinho, he's not going to get, Botafogo are quite an attacking team, so, they're down to 10 men. But they were 2-0 up at half-time and went on and won it 3-1. Vitinho didn't really do anything spectacular, playing more as a sort of right-back, really. More like the early Vitinho that we saw. Solid and hard-working up and down the flanks. But it's great to see him do it. He's one of those players. He's one of the few players, really. I mean, I don't really, somebody put in, it might have been you, Greaves, who pointed out, Amdouni scoring a winning goal for Benfica. And I'm thinking, like, that didn't move me in any way whatsoever. I don't care what Amdouni does at Benfica. I'm actually quite glad for Vitinho. Who else is there from that company or a team who's left who I'd like to see Odegaard do well at Spurs. If he gets himself fit and gets into what is a pretty decent Spurs side, that'd be good to see. But there was nothing to dislike about Odegaard at all. But Vitinho, I don't know. After 2 seasons, he's sort of left a bit of an impression at Turf Moor, hasn't he?
Yeah. I think we often mentioned last year he felt like one of the only players to kind of come off the pitch sometimes with any kind of credit in the bank, given his work rate and his ability to turn what ability he had, and he wasn't the most gifted member of that squad into pretty much a 7 out of 10 every week in a team which Mao's more talented players were offering sweet nothings most of the time, but yeah,
he'll never be in the Hall of Fame alongside Assignon, will he? Would he? But
no,
still decent.
He's a Brazilian Andy Farrell, though.
He did play a lot of roles, didn't he?
Yeah.
Never played in goal though. But there we go. Right, then let's leave it there. The Clarets back in action on Friday night against Middlesbrough at Turf Moor. This new TV deal switching all of the fixtures around again, and we don't have a 3:00 this weekend, unfortunately. But it does mean that your weekend's your own, I guess. But we'll be back on Friday morning with the usual episode of the podcast where we'll preview that game. And look ahead to seeing if we can work out what the hell Scott Parker's going to do with all of that talent at his disposal come 7:45 and kick off on Friday. Until then, enjoy your week. Up the Clarets.